The morning sun blazed mercilessly over the rugged mountains of Afghanistan as Team Echo moved through the rocky terrain. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison led his four-man SEAL team deeper into Taliban territory, their mission clear but dangerous. They were tracking a high-value target who had been coordinating attacks on coalition forces for months. The landscape was unforgiving. Jagged peaks stretched endlessly in every direction, creating perfect hiding spots for enemy fighters. The team had been moving for 6 hours, communicating only through hand signals and whispered radio chatter. Each man carried 60 pounds of gear, including specialized weapons, ammunition, and communication equipment that could mean the difference between life and death. Morrison checked his watch. They were making good time, but something felt wrong. The village below them was too quiet. No children playing, no women hanging laundry, no men tending to livestock. In his 12 years of military service, Morrison had learned to trust his instincts. And right now they were screaming danger. Petty Officer Rodriguez, the team's communications specialist, crouched beside a boulder and adjusted his radio frequency. The static crackled in their earpieces as he attempted to establish contact with their forward operating base. Standard protocol required check-ins every 2 hours, and they were approaching their window. Behind them, Petty Officers Chen and Williams maintained rear security, their eyes constantly scanning the ridge lines for any sign of movement. The Taliban were masters of mountain warfare, using the terrain to their advantage. They could appear and disappear like ghosts, striking fast and melting back into the landscape. As the team prepared to descend toward the village, Morrison noticed fresh tire tracks in the dirt. The treads were recent, probably from within the last 24 hours. More concerning was the pattern. Multiple vehicles had moved through this area, suggesting either a large supply convoy or a significant military presence. Rodriguez's voice came through the comm system, barely above a whisper. His attempts to reach base were met with nothing but static and interference. The mountains created natural communication dead zones, but this felt different. Someone might be jamming their frequencies, which meant they had been detected. The team hugged the rocky outcropping as Morrison studied the village through his binoculars. The buildings were typical Afghan construction, mud, brick, and stone clustered around a central courtyard. But positioned strategically around the perimeter were fighting positions that hadn't been there in their intelligence briefings. Chen spotted movement first. A figure in traditional Afghan clothing appeared briefly in a doorway, before disappearing back inside. Then another, and another. What should have been a sleeping mountain village was clearly occupied by someone who didn't want to be seen. Morrison made the tactical decision to hold their position and observe. Intelligence suggested their target would be moving through this area within the next few hours, but the situation on the ground had clearly changed. The village was being used as a staging area, and his small team was potentially walking into a hornet's nest. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of cooking fires and diesel fuel. Somewhere in that village, engines were running. Morrison's experience told him they were looking at vehicles, probably armed ones hidden among the buildings. Rodriguez tried the radio again, cycling through different frequencies and power settings. Still nothing but static and the occasional burst of what sounded like coded transmissions in a language none of them recognized. They were effectively cut off from support, operating blind in enemy territory. Williams pointed toward a ridgeline roughly 800 meters to their east. Sunlight had reflected off something metallic, just for a split second. It could have been anything. A piece of discarded metal, a belt buckle, or the scope of a rifle. In this business, you assumed the worst and hoped for the best. The team found themselves in a classic military dilemma. Their mission required them to continue forward, but prudence suggested retreat. Morrison weighed their options while keeping one eye on the village below. They had come too far to turn back without actionable intelligence, but staying put much longer would compromise their position. As if reading his thoughts, Chen's voice came through the comm system with urgent intensity. He had spotted armed men moving between buildings, at least 6 individuals carrying AK-47 rifles and what appeared to be rocket-propelled grenades. This was no longer a reconnaissance mission. They had stumbled into something much bigger. Morrison's training kicked in. He began calculating escape routes, ammunition supplies, and the distance to possible extraction points. The nearest friendly forces were at least 40 kilometers away, assuming their radios started working again. For now, Team Echo was completely alone in hostile territory, watching a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond their control. The situation deteriorated rapidly as more armed figures emerged from the village buildings. Morrison counted at least 15 fighters, all carrying weapons and moving with military precision. This wasn't a random gathering of local militia. These men were trained, organized, and preparing for something significant. Rodriguez continued his attempts to establish communication, switching between emergency frequencies and trying different antenna configurations. The radio crackled with fragments of intercepted conversations, but nothing useful. Each failed transmission attempt increased their isolation and vulnerability. Williams had been monitoring their rear approach when he spotted dust clouds on the horizon. Vehicles were approaching from the south, the same direction their team had traveled hours earlier. Through his binoculars, he counted 3 trucks moving in tactical formation, maintaining proper intervals to avoid presenting a concentrated target. Chen's position gave him the best view of the village's eastern approach. He watched as fighters began establishing defensive positions, using sandbags and steel plates to create hardened firing points. Someone had turned this quiet mountain settlement into a fortress, and Team Echo had walked straight into the middle of it. Morrison realized they had stumbled upon a major Taliban staging area, possibly preparing for a coordinated attack on coalition forces. The intelligence value was enormous, but only if they could survive to report it. Their current position provided good observation but terrible defensive capabilities. The sound of helicopter rotors echoed off the mountain walls, but the aircraft were too distant to identify. Morrison hoped they belonged to coalition forces, but in this region, that was far from certain. The Taliban had been known to acquire and use captured aircraft, turning friendly assets into deadly threats. Rodriguez finally managed to establish weak contact with their forward operating base. The signal was breaking up badly, but he managed to transmit their coordinates and a brief situation report before the connection died completely. At least someone knew where they were, assuming the message had been received clearly. The approaching vehicles had reached the village outskirts, and Team Echo could see heavily armed men dismounting from the trucks. The newcomers were greeted by the existing fighters, confirming this was a planned rendezvous rather than a chance encounter. Chen spotted something that made his blood run cold. One of the new arrivals was carrying what appeared to be a shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile system. If these fighters were planning to target coalition aircraft, countless lives could be at stake. The intelligence they had gathered was no longer just valuable, it was critical. Morrison faced an impossible decision. His team could attempt to withdraw immediately, hoping to escape before being detected. Alternatively, they could maintain their position and gather more intelligence, risking capture or death but potentially saving many more lives. Williams noticed movement on the ridgeline where they had seen the earlier reflection. Multiple figures were now visible, moving in a coordinated pattern that suggested they were setting up an observation post or sniper position. Team Echo was potentially being watched, even as they watched the village below. The radio crackled with a brief transmission in clear English, but the words were garbled and impossible to understand. Rodriguez adjusted his equipment desperately, trying to re-establish the connection. In their current situation, any communication with friendly forces could mean the difference between survival and disaster. The fighters in the village had completed their defensive preparations and were now gathering around what appeared to be a map or planning document. Even at this distance, Morrison could see the intensity of their discussion. Something significant was being planned and time was running short. Chen reported that the helicopter sounds were getting closer, coming from the northwest. The aircraft seemed to be following the valley floor, using the terrain to mask their approach. Morrison couldn't determine if this was good news or catastrophically bad news. The tension was becoming unbearable. Every minute they remained in position increased the risk of detection, but the intelligence they were gathering could prevent a major attack on coalition forces. Morrison's leadership experience told him to trust his instincts, but those same instincts were pulling him in different directions. Rodriguez made one final attempt to establish communication, broadcasting on the emergency frequency that all coalition forces monitored. His message was simple and direct, requesting immediate assistance and reporting a significant enemy concentration. The response was nothing but static and the distant sound of the approaching helicopters. Williams suddenly froze, his binoculars trained on the eastern ridgeline. He had spotted the distinctive outline of a rifle scope, and it appeared to be pointed directly at their position. Team Echo had been discovered, and their carefully planned observation mission had just become a desperate fight for survival. Morrison's mind raced through their options as he realized their situation had fundamentally changed. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by hostile forces in some of the most unforgiving terrain on Earth. The next few minutes would determine whether Team Echo completed their mission or became another casualty statistic in an endless war. The first shot shattered the mountain silence like thunder. Williams felt the bullet whistle past his head, close enough to hear the distinctive crack of a high-velocity round. The sniper had found their range, and Team Echo's cover was blown. Morrison immediately ordered his men to take defensive positions among the rocky outcropping. Rodriguez abandoned his attempts at long-range communication and switched to close-range emergency frequencies. His desperate calls for immediate assistance echoed across the airwaves, but the responding static suggested they were truly alone. The helicopters they had heard were still distant, and their identity remained unknown. Chen opened fire with controlled bursts, targeting the muzzle flashes on the eastern ridgeline. His accurate shooting forced the enemy snipers to take cover, buying precious seconds for his teammates to reposition. The rocky terrain provided some protection, but they were exposed from multiple directions. Williams spotted fighters moving up the southern slope, using the natural terrain features to advance on their position. At least 8 men were climbing toward them, carrying automatic weapons and moving with tactical precision. Team Echo was about to be surrounded with nowhere to retreat. Morrison assessed their desperate situation while returning fire toward the village. The enemy had superior numbers, knew the terrain intimately, and had the advantage of prepared positions. His team's only advantages were superior training, better equipment, and the element of surprise they had already lost. The sound of diesel engines roared to life in the village below. 2 of the trucks were moving, their drivers using the buildings as cover while maneuvering to flank Team Echo's position. Morrison realized the enemy commander was executing a classic hammer and anvil tactic, designed to crush his small team between converging forces. Rodriguez managed to establish brief contact with a coalition aircraft, but the pilot's response was barely audible through the static. The helicopter was approximately 15 minutes away, but Morrison knew they didn't have 15 minutes. At their current rate of ammunition consumption, they would be overrun within 10. Chen's rifle scope tracked movement among the village buildings. He had identified what appeared to be the enemy commander, a tall figure directing fighters with hand signals and radio communications. A single well-placed shot could disrupt their coordination, but the range was extreme and the target kept disappearing behind cover. The attacking fighters had reached within 200 meters of Team Echo's position. Williams could see their faces now, hardened men with the confident expressions of warriors who believed victory was assured. Their weapons were well maintained, and their movement suggested extensive combat experience. Morrison made the difficult decision to begin a fighting withdrawal toward higher ground. Staying in their current position meant certain death, but movement would expose them to concentrated fire from multiple directions. Each man would have to trust his teammates completely to survive the next few minutes. Rodriguez slung his radio and prepared to move, but kept one ear monitoring the emergency frequency. Somewhere in the static and interference, he thought he heard a faint voice speaking English. The transmission was too weak to understand, but it suggested friendly forces were attempting to reach them. The first truck emerged from behind the village buildings, its mounted machine gun already traversing toward Team Echo's position. The heavy weapon could shred their rocky cover in seconds, turning their defensive advantage into a death trap. Chen immediately shifted his fire to engage the vehicle. Williams provided covering fire as Morrison and Rodriguez began moving to a secondary position 30 meters upslope. The rocky terrain made movement dangerous, but staying meant facing the machine gun's devastating firepower. Bullets ricocheted off stones around them, sending sharp fragments flying in all directions. Chen's precision shooting had damaged the truck's machine gun, but more fighters were emerging from the village. He counted at least 20 armed men now advancing on their position, supported by the remaining vehicles and coordinated by radio communication. His ammunition supply was becoming a critical concern. The helicopter sounds were definitely getting closer, but Morrison couldn't determine their nationality or intentions. In this region, aircraft could belong to coalition forces, Afghan military, or even captured equipment in enemy hands. Until positive identification was made, they represented another unknown threat. Rodriguez suddenly stopped moving, his radio crackling with a clear transmission in English. An American voice was requesting their exact position and asking about enemy strength. Help was finally available, but they needed to survive long enough for it to arrive. The advancing fighters had spread out in a classic assault formation, making individual targeting difficult while maintaining concentrated firepower. Morrison realized his team was facing experienced combat veterans who understood mountain warfare intimately. This wasn't going to be a simple fighting withdrawal. Williams spotted additional muzzle flashes from a previously undetected position on the western ridge. Team Echo was now taking fire from 3 directions simultaneously, with enemy forces closing on their flanks. Their tactical situation had deteriorated beyond recovery through conventional means. Chen's rifle clicked empty, and he smoothly transitioned to his secondary weapon, while Rodriguez tossed him a fresh magazine. Their ammunition supplies were dwindling rapidly, and resupply was impossible. Every shot had to count if they wanted to survive the next few minutes. Morrison keyed his radio with a desperate transmission on the emergency frequency, broadcasting their coordinates and requesting immediate close air support. His voice was calm and professional despite their desperate circumstances, but everyone could hear the urgency underlying his words. Time was running out for Team Echo. The enemy machine gun roared back to life, its heavy rounds chewing through the rocky cover like it was made of paper. Team Echo was pinned down completely, unable to move or return effective fire. Morrison watched helplessly as enemy fighters closed to within 100 meters, their victory seeming inevitable. Rodriguez's radio suddenly exploded with crystal-clear communication. An unknown voice with an American accent was requesting immediate information about their tactical situation. The transmission was strong and professional, but came from an unexpected frequency that suggested the speaker wasn't part of normal coalition operations. Chen had found a narrow gap between 2 boulders that provided a stable firing position. Through his scope, he could see the enemy commander coordinating the final assault. The man was positioned behind a stone wall approximately 400 meters away, well within rifle range but protected by substantial cover. Williams was down to his last magazine when something extraordinary happened. A single rifle shot echoed across the valley, followed immediately by screams from the advancing fighters. One of the enemy soldiers had fallen, struck by a bullet that seemed to come from nowhere. Morrison scanned the surrounding ridgelines desperately, trying to identify the source of the mysterious shot. The angle suggested it had come from the northern peaks at least 800 meters away. Someone with exceptional marksmanship skills was engaging the enemy forces. The unknown sniper fired again, and another enemy fighter collapsed. The shot placement was perfect, center mass hits that dropped targets immediately. Panic began spreading among the attacking forces as they realized an unseen marksman was picking them off systematically. Rodriguez established contact with the mysterious gunman through his radio. The voice belonged to Staff Sergeant Marcus Stone, a Marine sniper who had been conducting his own reconnaissance mission in the area. He had heard Team Echo's distress calls and moved into position to provide support. Stone's third shot struck the machine gunner, silencing the heavy weapon that had been suppressing Team Echo. His fourth shot hit the truck driver, causing the vehicle to crash into a boulder and eliminating the mobile threat. The enemy assault was faltering under the precise long-range fire. Chen used the confusion to engage targets with his rifle, working in coordination with the unseen Marine sniper. Together they created overlapping fields of fire that devastated the enemy formation. The attackers found themselves caught between 2 skilled marksmen who showed no mercy. Williams began moving to a flanking position, taking advantage of the enemy's disarray. His assault rifle chattered in short, controlled bursts as he engaged fighters who were trying to take cover from Stone's devastating sniper fire. The tactical situation was finally shifting in their favor. Morrison coordinated the defense through his radio, calling out targets and directing fire. Stone's position allowed him to see the entire battlefield, and his tactical advice proved invaluable. The Marine sniper had turned their desperate last stand into a coordinated ambush. The enemy commander attempted to rally his forces, but Stone's rifle spoke again. The Taliban leader dropped instantly, struck down by a shot that traveled nearly a kilometer through the thin mountain air. Leaderless and under devastating fire, the remaining fighters began to break and run. Rodriguez re-established contact with the approaching helicopter, which turned out to be a coalition medical evacuation aircraft, responding to their earlier distress calls. The pilot reported that quick reaction forces were en route, but wouldn't arrive for another 20 minutes. Chen shifted his fire to engage the fleeing fighters, but Stone's voice came through the radio advising restraint. The Marine sniper explained that he had been tracking this particular Taliban cell for weeks, and some of the survivors might lead them to larger concentrations of enemy forces. Williams moved among the abandoned enemy equipment, conducting hasty battle damage assessment. The attackers had left behind weapons, ammunition, and communication equipment that could provide valuable intelligence. More importantly, they had abandoned the surface-to-air missile system Chen had spotted earlier. Morrison established a defensive perimeter while coordinating with Stone over the radio. The Marine sniper was repositioning to provide overwatch as the helicopter approached for extraction. His precise shooting had single-handedly turned a catastrophic situation into a tactical victory. The approaching helicopter was now visible, a UH-60 Black Hawk flying low through the valleys to avoid detection. Stone guided the aircraft to a suitable landing zone while maintaining vigilance for any remaining enemy threats. His professional competence was saving their lives. Rodriguez gathered the abandoned enemy intelligence materials while Chen provided security. The documents and electronic devices could reveal Taliban operational plans, potentially preventing future attacks on coalition forces. Their mission had evolved from simple reconnaissance to a major intelligence coup. Stone's voice came through the radio with a final tactical update. He had counted 37 enemy fighters in total, with 14 confirmed casualties and the rest scattered across the mountains. The Taliban cell had been effectively neutralized, eliminating a significant threat to coalition operations. Williams spotted movement on a distant ridge and reported it to Stone, who confirmed it was one of the surviving enemy fighters. The Marine sniper tracked the target through his scope, but chose not to engage, allowing the survivor to escape and potentially lead them to other Taliban positions. Morrison felt a profound sense of gratitude toward the unknown Marine who had appeared from nowhere to save their lives. Stone's exceptional marksmanship and tactical expertise had turned certain death into victory, demonstrating the bonds that connected all American warriors regardless of service branch. The helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust and rotor wash, its crew chief already preparing for rapid extraction. Team Echo gathered their equipment and the captured intelligence materials, ready to depart this deadly mountain battlefield that had nearly become their grave. As Team Echo boarded the extraction helicopter, Morrison keyed his radio one final time to thank the mysterious Marine sniper who had saved their lives. Stone's response was characteristically brief and professional, but Morrison could hear the satisfaction in his voice. The mission had been successful beyond anyone's expectations. The Black Hawk lifted off into the thin mountain air, carrying Team Echo and their captured intelligence away from the battlefield. Through the aircraft's windows, they could see Stone's position on the northern ridgeline, a tiny figure barely visible among the rocks and shadows. Rodriguez worked frantically during the flight to translate and analyze the captured enemy documents. The papers revealed a coordinated Taliban offensive planned for the following week, targeting 3 coalition outposts simultaneously. The intelligence value was enormous, potentially saving hundreds of lives. Chen stared out at the rugged landscape below, still processing how quickly their situation had changed from desperate to triumphant. One unknown Marine with exceptional shooting skills had turned the tide of battle, demonstrating the power of individual excellence in modern warfare. Williams inventoried the captured equipment and weapons, documenting each item for intelligence analysis. The surface-to-air missile system was particularly significant, as it could have been used to target coalition aircraft throughout the region. Stone's intervention had prevented a major escalation in enemy capabilities. The helicopter crew chief informed Morrison that they were being diverted to Bagram Air Base for immediate debriefing. Higher command wanted to hear their story directly and begin exploiting the captured intelligence immediately. Their routine reconnaissance mission had become a significant intelligence victory. Morrison composed his preliminary after-action report during the flight, but struggled to adequately describe Stone's contribution to their survival. The Marine sniper had appeared from nowhere, engaged superior enemy forces with devastating effectiveness, and disappeared back into the mountains like a ghost. Rodriguez finally established stable communication with their command structure, providing a detailed situation report that caused immediate excitement among intelligence analysts. The captured documents were already being prepared for translation and distribution to units that might be targeted in the planned offensive. As Bagram Air Base appeared on the horizon, Chen reflected on the day's events with a mixture of relief and professional pride. They had stumbled into a major enemy concentration, gathered critical intelligence, and survived against overwhelming odds thanks to exceptional teamwork and timely assistance. The Black Hawk touched down on the airbase's landing pad, where teams of intelligence specialists were already waiting to debrief Team Echo and examine the captured materials. The routine reconnaissance mission had generated enough intelligence to occupy analysts for weeks. Morrison's first priority after landing was attempting to locate Staff Sergeant Stone and arrange proper recognition for his actions. However, inquiries revealed that no Marine sniper units were officially operating in that sector. Stone appeared to be conducting an unauthorized solo mission, which raised interesting questions about his status and objectives. Williams worked with explosive ordnance disposal specialists to safely transport and analyze the captured surface-to-air missile system. The weapon was of Russian manufacture but had been modified with components that suggested sophisticated technical support for Taliban forces. Rodriguez's translation work revealed that the captured documents contained detailed maps of coalition patrol routes, suggesting the enemy had been conducting surveillance for months. Stone's intervention had not only saved Team Echo but had disrupted a major intelligence gathering operation. The debriefing session lasted 6 hours, with analysts asking detailed questions about every aspect of the engagement. Morrison's description of Stone's marksmanship drew particular interest, as several intelligence officers seemed to recognize the Marine's name when it was mentioned. Chen's tactical sketches of the battlefield helped analysts understand the engagement sequence and Stone's positioning. The Marine sniper had chosen his location perfectly, dominating the entire valley with clear fields of fire while remaining concealed from enemy observation. Late that evening, Morrison finally received confirmation that Staff Sergeant Marcus Stone was indeed a Marine sniper, but was operating under classified mission parameters that couldn't be discussed with standard personnel. His presence in the area had been purely coincidental, but ultimately life-saving. The captured intelligence led to immediate changes in coalition patrol schedules and defensive preparations. 3 different outposts were reinforced, and their security protocols updated based on the Taliban plans Team Echo had discovered. Lives were definitely saved by their actions. Williams learned that the enemy weapons and equipment would be used to brief other units about Taliban capabilities and tactics. The intelligence value extended far beyond the immediate threat, helping coalition forces understand enemy operations throughout the region. Rodriguez's communication logs from the engagement were analyzed to improve radio procedures and equipment performance. His ability to establish contact with Stone despite communication jamming had been crucial to coordinating the defense and extraction. As Team Echo settled in for the night at Bagram, Morrison reflected on the randomness of war and the bonds that connected warriors across service branches. A Marine sniper they had never met had risked his own mission to save their lives, asking nothing in return except professional satisfaction. The official citation for their actions would mention exceptional reconnaissance and intelligence gathering under enemy fire. But Morrison knew the real story was about an unknown Marine who had appeared from nowhere when they needed him most. Some heroes operated in shadows, their contributions known only to those they saved. Chen fell asleep that night thinking about precision, both in shooting and in timing. Stone's shots had been perfect, but his timing had been even better. Sometimes survival depended not just on skill, but on being in exactly the right place at exactly the right moment. 3 weeks after the mountain engagement, Morrison received unexpected orders to report to a classified briefing at Coalition headquarters. The meeting included senior intelligence officers and special operations commanders who rarely involved themselves in routine mission debriefings. Something significant was developing. The briefing revealed that Stone's unauthorized presence in the mountains hadn't been coincidental after all. The Marine sniper had been conducting a highly classified counter-surveillance operation, tracking Taliban intelligence networks that had been compromising coalition operations for months. Team Echo had unknowingly stumbled into his operational area. Rodriguez learned that his communication intercepts during the engagement had provided crucial intelligence about enemy communication protocols. The Taliban cell they had encountered was part of a larger network coordinating attacks across 3 provinces, and Stone's mission had been to identify and neutralize key personnel within that network. Chen was informed that his tactical sketches and sniper observations had helped analysts understand Stone's methodology and effectiveness. The Marines' shooting solutions under extreme conditions were being studied to improve training programs for other precision marksmen throughout the coalition forces. Williams discovered that the captured surface-to-air missile system had been tracked by intelligence agencies for 6 months as it moved through Taliban supply networks. Its interdiction had closed a major intelligence gap and prevented its potential use against coalition aircraft throughout the region. The classified briefing revealed that Stone's mission had been personally authorized by the highest levels of command, operating outside normal chains of communication to maintain operational security. His intervention to save Team Echo had actually enhanced his primary mission by eliminating key enemy personnel. Morrison learned that the Taliban commander Stone had eliminated was actually a former Afghan military officer who had been providing the enemy with detailed information about coalition tactics and procedures. His death had disrupted intelligence operations that had been responsible for numerous coalition casualties. The captured documents had revealed the full scope of the Taliban intelligence network, leading to a coordinated series of raids that neutralized dozens of enemy operatives across Afghanistan. Team Echo's accidental discovery had triggered the largest counterintelligence operation in the theater for over 2 years. Rodriguez was surprised to learn that Stone had been monitoring their radio frequencies for weeks as part of his surveillance mission. The Marine sniper had recognized their call signs immediately and had already been moving to their area when the engagement began, explaining his rapid response time. Chen's ammunition count analysis revealed that Stone had fired only 7 shots during the entire engagement, achieving 6 confirmed kills and 1 vehicle disable. The efficiency demonstrated exceptional marksmanship skills that exceeded even special operations standards for precision shooting. Williams was told that his battlefield equipment recovery had provided crucial forensic evidence linking the Taliban cell to Iranian weapon suppliers. The intelligence had diplomatic implications extending far beyond the immediate military situation in Afghanistan. The briefing concluded with Morrison learning that Stone had specifically requested Team Echo for a follow-up joint mission, targeting the remaining elements of the Taliban intelligence network. The Marine sniper wanted to work with the team that had helped him complete his original objectives. 2 days later, Team Echo found themselves at a remote forward operating base, meeting Staff Sergeant Marcus Stone for the first time. The Marine was younger than Morrison had expected, with the quiet confidence that characterized elite snipers. His handshake was firm but brief, his manner professional but warm. Stone's mission briefing revealed the scope of his solo operations over the previous 3 months. Working alone with minimal support, he had identified and eliminated 12 key Taliban intelligence operatives while gathering information that was reshaping coalition understanding of enemy capabilities. The joint mission would target the network's communication hub, located in a fortified compound near the Pakistani border. Stone's reconnaissance had identified the location, but the target required a coordinated assault that exceeded his solo capabilities. Team Echo would provide the tactical expertise needed to complete the mission. Rodriguez was fascinated by Stone's communication setup, which included specialized equipment for intercepting and analyzing enemy transmissions. The Marine had been listening to Taliban communications for months, building detailed intelligence pictures that revealed operational patterns and personnel relationships. Chen spent hours discussing long-range shooting techniques with Stone, learning about ballistic calculations and environmental factors that affected precision at extreme distances. The Marine's expertise was exceptional, backed by years of experience in the world's most challenging shooting environments. Williams reviewed Stone's intelligence files on the target compound, impressed by the detailed analysis and tactical recommendations. The Marine had conducted thorough reconnaissance, identifying weak points and defensive positions that would be crucial for mission planning. As Team Echo prepared for their joint mission with Stone, Morrison reflected on the strange circumstances that had brought them together. A desperate distress call had been answered by an unknown sniper, leading to a partnership that might determine the success of coalition. Counterintelligence operations. The mission briefing concluded with Stone making a simple statement that captured the essence of special operations warfare. Individual excellence mattered, but teamwork determined victory. Team Echo had saved his mission by surviving long enough to provide crucial intelligence, and now he would help them complete something much larger. Rodriguez checked his communication equipment one final time, knowing that their upcoming mission would require perfect coordination between ground forces and their mysterious Marine sniper. The distress call that had nearly been their last transmission had instead become the first step in dismantling an entire enemy intelligence network. That evening, as Team Echo and Stone made final preparations for their joint mission, Morrison realized that the mountain engagement had changed all of them. They had learned that survival sometimes depended on the courage of strangers, and that individual heroism could still determine the outcome of modern warfare. Tomorrow would test whether that lesson translated into victory against an enemy that had eluded coalition forces for years.